Was America's first subway built as a secret pneumatic tube? This is a question that brings up a lot of interesting history. It mixes truth with a bit of a legend. The short answer is yes and no. There was indeed an early, almost secret pneumatic tube system built underground in New York City. It was designed to move people, but it wasn't the first real continuously operating subway that most people think of today. That came later in a different city, and it wasn't pneumatic or secret. To understand this, we need to look at two different stories. One story is about an inventor and his dream in New York. The other is about a city solving a big problem in Boston. Both stories happened in the late 1800s. Cities were growing fast then. Streets were crowded. Horse-drawn carriages and streetcars made a mess. People needed a new way to get around. They started to look underground. This idea of going below the streets was new and exciting. It also brought big challenges. Engineering was hard, money was a problem, and sometimes politics got in the way. So when people ask about a secret pneumatic tube subway, they are likely thinking of one specific project. It was a really innovative idea for its time. It definitely had elements of being secret. And it absolutely used pneumatic power, meaning it was pushed by air, but it was more of a demonstration, a proof of concept. It didn't last long. It didn't become a full transportation system for the public. The first real subway, the one that truly changed how a city moved, was a different beast entirely. It was a public project that used a different kind of power, and it was built to last. This whole question highlights how different inventions and ideas compete. Sometimes the most imaginative idea isn't the one that wins out. Sometimes a simpler, more practical approach takes hold, but the imaginative ideas still pave the way. They show what's possible, they get people thinking, so let's look closer at both of these firsts to sort out the truth. The late 1800s were a time of huge change in America. Cities were booming. New York City was a prime example. Its population was exploding, streets were a chaotic mess, horse-drawn omnibuses and streetcars packed the narrow roads. The air was thick with dust and horse manure. Getting from one place to another was slow and unpleasant. People spent hours stuck in traffic. There had to be a better way. This problem wasn't unique to New York. Other big cities like Boston faced similar issues. Many solutions were proposed. Some thought elevated trains running above the streets would work. New York did build some of these, but they were noisy and cast shadows. They dripped oil and water onto the streets below. They didn't solve the core problem of getting people around quickly and cleanly. So some visionaries started looking down. They thought, what if we went underground? Building a tunnel under a busy city was a huge undertaking. It was expensive, it was dangerous, and it was new technology. There were many unknowns, but the idea had a strong appeal. It would take traffic off the streets, it would create a cleaner, faster route. This is where the story of America's first subway gets complicated. Because there are two main projects often pointed to. Both have a claim to being first, depending on how you define it. One project was in New York. It was imagined by a man named Alfred Ely Beach. He was an inventor and the editor of Scientific American. He had a bold idea, a subway powered by air, a pneumatic system. This project is the one that gets tied to the secret pneumatic tube question. The Beach faced strong political opposition, so he had to be clever. His project was indeed built with a degree of secrecy. It was a short line, more of an experiment than a full transit network. The other project was in Boston. This was a more public, government-backed effort. It aimed to create a real working subway system for the city's residents. It didn't use air power. It used electricity. It became the first subway in America that ran continuously and served the public daily. It was not secret. So we have Beach's pneumatic tunnel in New York, built with some secrecy. And we have Boston's electric subway, built openly for the public. Both were pioneers. Both helped shape urban transportation, but they were very different in their purpose, their technology, and their lasting impact. The idea of a secret pneumatic tube definitely fits Beach's story better, but the idea of a first subway that functioned like modern subways points to Boston. We need to dive into Beach's story first. It's a fascinating tale of innovation against political roadblocks. It explains why anyone would think America's first subway was a secret pneumatic tube. His project was truly ahead of its time. It showed people that going underground was possible, even if his specific method didn't become the standard. Alfred Ely Beach was a remarkable man. He wasn't just an inventor, he was a forward thinker. As the editor of Scientific American, he saw new technologies emerging every day. He understood the problems of a growing city like New York. The streets were getting worse. The horse-drawn vehicles caused endless jams. They were slow, they were dirty. Beach believed there had to be a cleaner, faster, more efficient way to move people. His solution was radical. A subway powered by air pressure, a pneumatic system. The idea was simple but ingenious. A large fan would push air into a sealed tunnel, propelling a car forward, or it could pull air out, sucking the car along. This was a clean technology. There were no noisy engines, no smoke. It seemed perfect for an underground system. But Beach faced a huge obstacle. The powerful political machine of Tammany Hall controlled New York City. The city was run by Boss Tweed. Tweed and his cronies made money from everything, including existing transportation systems. They had no interest in a new subway that they couldn't control or profit from. They blocked every attempt to build a new public transit system. They feared it would hurt their existing interests. They also wanted to make sure they got a piece of any new project. Beach knew he couldn't get permission to build a subway openly, so he devised a brilliant plan. He would build it in secret, or at least under a disguised purpose. He applied for a permit to build a pneumatic parcel delivery system under Broadway. He claimed it was for moving mail in small packages. This sounded harmless enough to Tammany Hall. It didn't seem like a direct threat to their existing transportation monopolies. The permit was granted. Construction began in 1869. Beach and his crew worked mostly at night. They used a specially designed tunneling shield that Beach himself invented. It was a huge cylinder that workmen could operate inside. They pushed it forward with hydraulic jacks. Then they removed the soil from inside it. This was a safer way to tunnel under existing buildings. It reduced the risk of collapses. The work was slow and hard. They dug under Broadway, right in the heart of the city. The secrecy continued during construction. Piles of dirt and debris were trucked away late at night. Neighbors often didn't know what was happening beneath their feet. Beach paid for the entire project himself. He invested a huge amount of his own money, around $350,000, which was an enormous sum back then. On February 26, 1870, the Beach Pneumatic Transit System opened to the public. It was a marvel. The entrance was inside a commercial building at Broadway and Warren Street. Passengers entered a lavishly decorated station. It had frescoes, a fountain, and even a grand piano. The single car was plush and comfortable. It looked like a luxury carriage. The ride was short, only 312 feet, about a block. But it was smooth and quiet. The car was pushed by a giant fan, 100 horsepower, located in the basement. People were amazed. It was an instant hit as a novelty. Thousands rode it. They paid 25 cents each for the experience. Beach proved his concept. He showed that pneumatic power could move a car and people underground. He envisioned a much larger system, extending for miles up and down Broadway. He had plans for multiple tracks and stations. But the political obstacles remained. Boss Tweed continued to block any efforts to expand the parcel delivery system into a full-fledged passenger subway. Tweed used his power to prevent Beach from getting the necessary legislative approvals. Without those approvals, Beach couldn't raise more money or continue construction. The Beach Pneumatic Transit operated for only 3 years. It closed in 1873. The tunnel was sealed. The ornate station was dismantled. The dream of a pneumatic subway in New York died. It was a brilliant engineering feat and a fascinating experiment. It truly was an early, somewhat secret pneumatic tube designed for people. But it never became a functional public transit system. It was ahead of its time, a victim of politics and the limitations of its technology for mass transit. Its story, however, left a lasting impression. It showed that underground transportation was not just a fantasy. While Alfred Ely Beach was battling Boss Tweed in New York, Boston was also struggling with its own urban transportation problems. Boston's streets were notoriously narrow and winding. They followed cow paths and colonial-era layouts. This made traffic congestion even worse than in New York. Horse-drawn streetcars jammed the main arteries. They were slow, noisy, and inefficient. The air quality suffered. Commuters were fed up. But Boston leaders learned from New York's struggles and its elevated train experiments. They wanted a solution that was permanent, effective, and truly served the public. They didn't want a private company to control it entirely, which could lead to more problems. The city decided it needed a public-funded, public-managed solution. In 1894, the Massachusetts state legislature created the Boston Transit Commission. Its sole purpose was to figure out how to solve the city's traffic crisis. The commission studied various options, including elevated lines and underground tunnels. They looked at what other cities, particularly London and its underground railway, were doing. They decided an underground system was the best way forward. Unlike Beech's pneumatic vision, Boston opted for electric power. By the late 1890s, electric streetcars were already a common sight on city streets. The technology was proven. Electric motors were powerful and relatively clean. They could move multiple cars linked together. This made electricity a far more practical choice for mass transit than pneumatic power, which would require massive fans and sealed tunnels for every segment. Construction began in 1895. This was not a secret project. It was a massive public works effort. Thousands of workers were employed. The main construction method was cut and cover. This involved digging a trench from the surface, building the tunnel structure, and then covering it back up. This was highly disruptive to the city streets above, but it was a known and proven method for building shallow tunnels. For deeper sections, shield tunneling, similar to what Beech used, was employed. The engineers faced huge challenges. They had to build under existing buildings. They navigated a maze of utility pipes and wires. They encountered soft, marshy soil in some areas, remnants of Boston's filled-in waterways. They used innovative techniques like freezing the ground with brine to stabilize it before digging. On September 1st, 1897, the Tremont Street subway opened. It was a historic day. This was America's first continuously operating subway. It ran from a southern terminal at the Public Garden under Tremont Street and then branched into two northern terminals. It was initially designed to carry existing electric streetcars underground, relieving surface congestion. It quickly proved its value. The impact was immediate and profound. Surface traffic eased considerably. The commute times were drastically cut for thousands of Bostonians. The underground stations were well lit. The electric cars ran quietly and efficiently. It was a clean and reliable way to travel. The Tremont Street subway wasn't just a novelty, it was a fundamental part of the city's infrastructure. It solved a real pressing problem. This system laid the groundwork for modern subway construction in America. It showed that a large-scale, publicly funded underground transit system was not only possible but highly successful. It wasn't a secret, it wasn't pneumatic, it was a practical electric solution to urban congestion. And it set the standard for what a subway should be. Its success inspired other cities, including New York, to finally build their own extensive electric subway systems years later. The Boston subway is still in operation today, a testament to its practical design and robust construction. Now, we can clearly see the differences between these two firsts. The question was America's first subway built as a secret pneumatic tube? The answer depends on which first you're talking about. Alfred Ely, Beech's pneumatic transit in New York City certainly fits parts of that description. It was pneumatic. It used air pressure to move a single car. It was built with a degree of secrecy. Beech disguised its purpose to get around political opposition, and it was an early attempt at an underground passenger transport system, a very early subway in spirit. But it was very short-lived. It was a demonstration, a proof of concept, not a full-scale public utility. It never grew beyond a single block. Boston's Tremont Street subway, on the other hand, was America's first continuously operating, publicly accessible subway. It was a true transit system, and it was none of the things in the question's premise. It was not secret, it was a massive public project, it was not pneumatic, it ran on electricity, a proven technology for mass transit. And it was built to solve a concrete public transportation problem, not as a secret experiment. Let's break down these core differences. Technology pneumatic versus electric. Beech's pneumatic system was innovative. It was clean and quiet, but it had limitations for mass transit. Moving many heavy cars or long trains using air pressure was technically complex and required huge amounts of power from giant fans. It was hard to scale up. Boston's electric system was more conventional for its time, but far more practical. The electric motors could easily power multiple cars linked together. They could handle heavier loads. The infrastructure for electricity was also becoming more widespread. This made it a more robust and scalable solution for moving thousands of people every day. A purpose demonstration versus public utility. Beech's subway was a vision. It was meant to show what was possible. It was a brave engineering feat and a political challenge, but it didn't fundamentally alter New York's transportation landscape during its short life. It was a glimpse into the future. Boston's subway was built as a solution to an urgent urban problem. Its purpose was clear: to relieve congestion and provide efficient public transit. It was integrated into the city's daily life from day one. It was a functional, everyday utility. Secrecy versus public works. Beech's project had to be built under the radar. Political corruption forced his hand. The secret aspect adds to its legendary status today. It was a clandestine fight against a powerful political machine. Boston's subway was a public endeavor from start to finish. It was planned by a public commission. It was funded by the city and state. Its construction was highly visible, though disruptive. There was no secret agenda. It was openly built for the benefit of the public, scope and longevity. Little Beach's subway was a single, short tunnel. It lasted 3 years as an attraction. It was never expanded. Boston's subway was built with expansion in mind. It was designed as the first segment of a larger network. It has operated continuously since 1897 and is still a vital part of Boston's public transit system. So, when we ask if America's first subway was a secret pneumatic tube, we are probably thinking of Alfred Ely Beach's incredible but ultimately unsuccessful effort in New York. It was a pneumatic tube, it was built with secrecy, and it was a very early subway. But it was not the first successful continuous public subway. That honor belongs to Boston. Both projects, however, played crucial roles. Beach's subway showed the public the potential of going underground. Boston's subway showed how to actually make it work on a large scale. They both contributed to America's journey beneath its cities. The stories of Beach's pneumatic transit and Boston's Tremont Street subway both hold important places in American history. They show how complex and pioneering the development of urban infrastructure truly was. Even though Beach's project didn't last, its impact was real. Beach's vision, despite its operational failure, sparked public imagination. It showed New Yorkers, and indeed the world, that underground travel was not just a fantasy. People rode his pneumatic car and saw the potential. This mental shift was important. It made the idea of a subway less alien, less scary. It showed that engineers could dig tunnels under bustling city streets. While Tammany Hall blocked Beach, his demonstration undoubtedly fueled the public desire for subways. When New York finally built its massive electric subway system decades later, the groundwork of public acceptance had already been laid, partly by Beach's bold experiment. Interestingly, the memory of Beach's tunnel faded over time. It was sealed up and mostly forgotten. But in 1912, workers digging for the new BMT Broadway subway line unexpectedly broke into Beach's old tunnel. They found the remains of the station, the huge fan, and the car. This rediscovery added to its legendary status, a secret passage found almost by accident. It showed how much history can be hidden right under our feet. Boston's success, on the other hand, was immediate and concrete. The Tremont Street subway proved that a large-scale electric underground transit system could work. It proved it could ease congestion, handle high passenger volumes, and become an essential part of city life. Boston became the model. Cities across America looked at Boston's success. They saw it as proof that investing in subways was worthwhile. This directly influenced the decisions in cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago to build their own extensive underground networks in the early 20th century. The evolution of technology also played a key role. Electric power for mass transit clearly won out over pneumatic systems. Electricity allowed for longer trains, higher speeds, and more flexibility. It was more efficient for carrying the huge numbers of people that growing cities needed to move. While pneumatic technology found other uses, like mail tubes, which did exist in cities for a time, it wasn't suitable for passenger subways. So, let's circle back to the original question. Was America's first subway built as a secret pneumatic tube? Yes, an early attempt at a subway, the Beach Pneumatic Transit in New York, was a pneumatic tube, and it was built with a degree of secrecy. It was a fascinating pioneering project that showcased an inventor's genius and vision. But no, the first continuously operating public subway in America, the Tremont Street subway in Boston, was not a pneumatic tube. It was an electric system, and it was not secret. It was a transparent public works project designed to solve the city's pressing transportation needs. Both stories are important. They show different paths to the same goal, moving people efficiently in crowded cities. Beach's secret pneumatic tube was a bold dream that inspired. Boston's public electric subway was a practical solution that endured. Together, they laid the foundation for the vast underground networks that crisscross American cities today. They are both vital chapters in the story of how we learn to travel below our bustling streets.